Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we created one custom annotation here, and the same annotation we used it on top of this particular method here. Okay, so using this particular example, what we did here, we are trying to load this particular whatever the information we added for this particular annotations here, right? So inside this particular, what we understand here, so only the important information we identified, something like retention here. So what are all the retention policies we are having? We are having the retention policies like source and class as well as runtime. So based on our requirement, we are going to use this particular retention policies. Okay, so this is we identified in the last session. Now I will try to provide the so one more example here. So the same what we will do basically, what we will do here, I'm going to create a one more example. I'm trying to create this particular meta 2, and this particular meta 2, now what I'm doing here, so ANNO2 annotation 2, I'm trying to create a method, and this particular method is expecting string str into value. Okay, so two parameter it is expecting. Getting the point? It is expecting two parameters. Now, what we need to understand basically, whenever we are defining this method, we already identified we are going to create a object here. Meta to something like me new meta 2. Okay. Now, what we need to understand here, I'm going to add this particular annotations here. So my annotation, and this one is expecting two parameters. And the val I'm going to provide something like 25. Okay, so this is the annotation is expecting two parameters. Now, what we need to understand here, we created one object of this particular meta2 class, and using this particular meta2, now what I will do, I'm going to load me dot get class, me dot this particular get class I'm trying to load. Now I'm trying to return the variable. So this is class 1 I'm going to use, and using this particular class 1, now what I'm doing here, class 1 dot get method. Getting the point? Class 1 dot get method. And now what you need to understand, this method taking two parameters. Okay, earlier whatever the method we define, the method is not taking any parameter. So observe carefully. Here I'm made as a null here. I made as a null because this annotation method is not taking any parameters. But whatever the example we are discussing here, this method is taking two parameters. So let me define the name of the method here. Something like what is we can write here ANNO2. Okay, so this is the name of the parameter. Now what are all the two parameters this method is expecting? First one is string.class, and second one is int.class. Okay, but if we observe carefully, what I need to provide here, this method is expecting here now. So carefully observe. We discuss about the var concept here. Getting the point? We discuss about the var concept. So this is the name of the method we defined here, and it is expecting the var concept too, and using this particular var concept, they are trying to provide the parameter. So now understand carefully. Here they are not providing how many parameters this method is going to take. Getting the point? How many this parameter is going to take? Here they defined as a 3 dots. So what exactly the 3 dot will do? Here they are trying to take multiple parameters from 0 to, you can provide any number of parameters like 0 to 10 or 20, 100. How many parameters you are required, you can provide. But in our example, how many parameters we are providing it? Something like 2 parameters here. Getting the point? So 2 parameters we are providing. So now observe carefully. This is the method is expecting the name of the method name, and it is expecting 2 parameters here. Okay, because here they are expecting 2 parameters. Now why I'm getting this error? If you observe carefully, this this method is going to throw an exception. Yesterday we discussed here. So otherwise you can see get method, we are calling this particular method, and it will try to return this particular method type, and it is going to throw this particular exceptions here. Getting the point? So this particular exception we are going to handle here, either the no such method exception or this particular security. So if you observe carefully, no such method is extending from this reflective operation exception, and it is a extending from the exception. Whenever any exception is extending from the exception class, so what we defined here yesterday, like in the previous classes, what we discussed here, this is a checked exception. Okay, and what about this particular security? So security is extending from the runtime exception. Getting the point? So we don't need to handle this particular security exception, but here we need to handle this particular exception called no such method exception, because it is a checked exception here. Getting the point? So how we are going to handle? Again here you can use the throws keyword, or you can go for the try catch block here. So now you can see it is trying to provide the throws declarations, and you can use the multi catch, or you can go for the try catch here. So I will try to define the multi catch here. Now you can see this is the multi catch exception. Basically what exactly it is doing here, how many the exceptions this particular method is going to throw. We are trying to handle the all the method exceptions here. Getting the point? This is important here. Now you can see, so no such method exception. So we are using the pi symbol here. Getting the point? And we are trying to handle the security exception, because these are all the subclasses of security here. Sorry, these are subclasses of the exception classes. Okay, so first we need to give the high priority to the like subclasses exception, and later we need to give the priority to the superclass exceptions here. Okay, so this is very important, we need to understand here, and here we are trying to provide the E. So this particular E is going to throw on a print stack error. Okay, so whatever the particular exception we are going to get, we are trying to print the stack trace information with the help of this particular method. Okay, but now what you need to understand here, what you need to understand, so if this method is no longer available, getting the point, so this exception will trigger. If this particular method is no longer available, this exception will trigger. Okay, now we define this particular try and catch block. So I'm trying to return this particular method, and this method, from this particular method, now what I will do, I'm going to load the annotations basically. Okay, I'm going to load annotation. Now you can see, so this is the get annotation I'm going to call. This is the get annotation I'm going to call, and here I'm going to provide the name of the annotation. So whatever the annotation we are using, the annotation we are going to provide here. So using this, now what we are doing is we are trying to return the my annotation, and after this I'm going to print the information. Annotation dot we need to call str, and annotation dot val. Okay, so this is very important here. Now if I'm going to run this example, what we are going to understand here, sorry, so basically here we did not define the main type here. Here I'm trying to define the main method, and from here I'm going to call this particular annotation 2. The annotation 2, I want to provide the information something like custom annotation, and later, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to provide this particular values here, something like 25. Okay, so but these particular values we are not doing anything. So just I'm adding these two parameters to whenever we are having this particular parameterized method, how we are going to load. So those information I'm trying to explain here. Getting the point. So this is, but annotation values only we are going to load here, not from the whatever we are trying to pass. So observe carefully, whatever the method we provided here, the method is not available. Why this particular method is not available? Because whatever we provided here, correct only. Getting the point. So anything we are missing here? Any NNO 2 string class and entry class we provided correct only. And why line number 11? So here only it is throwing an error here. Meta 2 classes we created. So what we are missing? Why this is not happening basically? Okay, so what I will do, I will put a breakpoint on this exception. We'll try to identify why this method is not handling here. Okay, so parameters type. What are all the parameters type we are getting? Annotation 2. So get method recursive null empty class. We are providing the parameters. Here private get a declaration public only. Okay, so I think here we need to provide public. Okay, so let me restart this example. Now observe carefully. We are getting two parameters and 25. Getting the point. So what we missed basically, we need to write this particular method public or private here. Getting the point. So internally, whatever the code we identified, it is not working on this particular default access modifier. So this is very important. We need to understand. But I made this particular method as a public. Now what happening internally? We are getting this particular information, two parameters and 25. So where we are trying to define this particular information. So this is the str, we define the two parameters, and the value we are defining as a 25. So this is the another example we are discussing with parameters information here. Okay, so this is very important. We need to understand here. So anyone having any questions so regarding this particular example?
Hi, sir. Uh, why we are using the multiple catch blocks, sir? Is there any specific reason that is it suffice if we use only one exception like
Okay,
super
I
class?
think, see, again, I explained in the last sessions, you are asking the same question because basically this object was is going to created by the our runtime system here. So instead of if we are handling the specific exception directly, we can handle the specific exception. If you are trying to use a super class, it needs to handle all the subclass exception because exception class is going to extend multiple subclasses here. So let me show you the method. Now you can see here we are trying to throw the exception. Here only we are trying to throw the exception, something like a throw new no such method exception, because here we are trying to create an object of this particular no such method. If you are handling directly this particular exception, we are not going to check multiple exception classes here. Only one exception class we are checking here, and this we are handling. And now you
Yes.
can see this method is throwing the two types of exception. You
I
can see
got
the
it, sir.
throws
I
keyword.
the method. Yeah, I got it, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Sir, can you please go to the main program? Uh, Sir, here we are passing custom annotation string, right, sir? But why we are getting the two parameters as an output?
Here only we define, right? Two parameters. See, this parameter we are not using anywhere.
Oh, okay.
So just I declare to this particular parameter to this particular method, but finally what we are doing is, here you can see. So I'm trying to load the my annotation. It's a custom annotation. So, and I'm trying to print the annotation dot str and annotation dot value. So these two information we define inside this particular annotation. So these are all the two. So just I'm explaining this, like you can implement these two parameters. I can do some operations here. But this example, we already did multiple example. But only the information I want to share here, whenever we are having, if the method is going to take parameters. Because in the last example, here we made as a null here. Okay, here we made as a null, but right now, what I'm doing here, I'm trying to provide the two parameters, the type I'm trying to provide here, and so if this method is no longer available, we'll get this particular exception. So that just now we identified here, and if the exception is not available, we are returning the my annotation, and from the my annotation, we are trying to load whatever the values we passed here. Okay, so now what I will do, I'm going to create a one more annotation. So this is basically the simple
Sir, can
annotation
you
I'm
please
trying.
explain line number 9 again?
Okay, basically this is the get class method which is available inside this particular object class. So if I'm going to open this, now you can see we are inside the object class. Okay, we define this object class. The method is override inside this particular class here. Getting the point. So class is a one Java class here. So see carefully, this is the keyword, small c. Okay, this is the capital C. Now how we are defining this particular meta to, same way we have a one class here. Getting the point. So this is the one class we define. Now you can see public finally class, and the name of the class we are defining as a class. Getting the point. And inside this particular class, we are having some additional methods. Now you can see it is calling like toString method. And later, so generic this particular string, if I want to call, you can call this. It is trying to provide some different information, and name of the this particular class name. If I want to identify, so just you can provide the class name as a string parameter. Okay. So whenever we are providing here, it is trying to return the class object here. So same thing, what we are doing here, we are trying to call this particular get class to load this particular current class object. What is the object we are going to load here? Basically, this object we are trying to load. Getting the point. So here we are trying to load this particular meta class information. Why we are loading this particular meta class information? Because we want to load this particular method. So on top of this particular method, we define the one annotation here. So finally, our aim is to load this particular annotation here. But if I want to load this annotation information, first we need to load the class. From the class, I'm trying to load the method. From the method, I'm trying to load the annotation. So this is the hierarchy we need to follow here. Directly, you cannot load the annotation or you cannot load method information. Getting the point. This is, so see the hierarchy, how we are trying to load here. First, we are loading the class. What is the class we are loading? This current class only, meta2 class. From the meta2 class, I'm trying to load the method here. Okay, we are loading the method. So which method we are loading? This is the annotation2 method. And after loading the annotation2 method, we are loading the annotation information. Getting the point. So directly, we don't have a scope to load annotation directly, but you can see method dot get annotation. If I want to call the annotation, I need a method object, and if I want to call the method, I need a class here. Getting the point? So this is because of this, we are trying to load the current object, current class object. From the current class object, we are trying to load the method, annotation, all those information. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now understand here, I'm going to write one more annotation. So this particular annotations will give you the some additional information. So just I'm trying to write what. The name of the annotation I'm trying to define as a what. Okay. So the retention policy I'm trying to add runtime. So this is we discuss here. And here we can add this particular target. Whenever we are trying to add this particular target here, so this is the specific here. And which location we are trying to use, so those information we are going to provide. Something I'm trying to use a method, so I'm trying to click on finish. So now you can see target we are adding method, and this particular retention we are trying to add runtime. So this retention we already discussed here, but now I want to provide the information target here, how this particular target is going to work. Getting the point? Now you can see internally it is expecting element type, and it is a what type, basically array type. Now what we can provide here? We can provide multiple values. Getting the point? Because the type we are having as a array type here. And what is the name of the method we are going to use? Something like value. And so if I'm going to provide this element type, now you can read this. Again, this is the enum here. The element type, basically it is a enum. So type here, type basically it is a class or interface. Getting the point? And it's going to include the annotation type, or we can go for the enum here. So whenever we are making this particular type, getting the point, the annotation is going to use on top of the class or interface, or it can be used any another annotations here. Getting the point? It can be used any another annotations, or we can go for the enum here. So this is the specific location. If we want to use this particular annotation, we can make as a type and the field here. So basically what you need to understand here, on top of the variable declarations, and same way it's going to include the enum constants here. On top of the enum also, we can add whatever the annotation we are going to create. So this is indicating this particular field. Now you can see method declaration and parameter. Okay, we can add a constructor. So we can go for the local variable. Local variable is nothing but whenever you are trying to define the scope, either it is a constructor block or a method block or any some other block we are going to use. On top of the block also, the on top of the local variable we are going to use this. Okay, and so as I explained, annotation type. Getting the point? And if we want to use the entire package here, entire package, we can go for this particular package information. Getting the point? So this is very important, the element type here. Basically it is what is providing here. It is giving the some restrictions here where we want to use this particular annotations here. Okay, now we'll go to this particular the annotation, like what we define as a what, and where we are trying to specify here something like method. Along with method, if you are trying to specify any additional so additional element type also we can include here, because it is expecting multiple values. So now what I'm doing here, this is the annotation I'm defining, and string I'm going to provide. String basically description. Okay, so this is the description, the method I'm trying to add here. Basically what exactly this description will do, whenever you are adding this particular annotation, we are going to provide the description of this particular method, what exactly the method will do. Okay, now what I will do, so the same example I'm going to use. On top of this particular method to class, I'm going to add what annotation. Now if we observe carefully, we are getting an error basically. Getting the point? We are getting an error. Why we are getting? Because on top of the class, we are not going to use this particular annotation called what annotation. The same annotation I'm going to use inside this particular method level. Let me comment out this because I'm not getting. Now you can see description we can provide. So what is the description we can provide here? Basically, what exactly the annotation 2 will do here. So simple message trying to load. So custom annotation properties. Getting the point. This is important, we need to understand. Now you can see what annotation we define, and we define the properties here. Like we define the one description here. What exactly this particular description is doing here? It is trying to load the custom annotation properties, whatever we are going to add. Now, how many annotations we added? 2 annotations we added. But here, getting the point. So how I'm trying to load this particular information? So my annotation, it is a single object. Getting the point. Here it is a single object, but here I don't want to use a single. We come up with 2 annotations, but I'm trying to load only one property here. So what is another like method we are having? So now observe carefully here. This is basically get annotations here. Get annotations. So this particular get annotations, it will try to return the annotations array here. It will try to return the annotations array here. Getting the point. So whenever it is trying to return the annotation array, now what we can do? We can provide the loop information, and we can try to return the one by one annotations values here. We can return the annotation value. Okay. So observe carefully. This is the annotation 2 I want to use here. And okay, annotation 2 I'm trying to print. So whenever I'm trying to print this particular example, what we need to understand is what kind of information it is going to provide. Now, basically here I'm trying to print the annotation object here. I'm trying to print the annotation object. Okay. So again, now what you can do from this particular annotation, again you can convert into the specific annotation, and you can load the age property. So instead of doing this, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to load the entire object. First one is my annotation. So this is the string parameter is expecting, and this is the value, and this is the another annotation what we are using, the what annotation. It is a description. Okay. So if I want to load the specific annotation, now what we can do? You can make the condition something like this: annotation do instance of what is the annotation we are having, something like my annotation. If it is this particular my annotation, now what we can do? We can convert into this particular annotation. So let's observe. Okay, annotation 2. Observe carefully. This is the way of converting the specific annotation type. Now using this, now what we can do? Simply we can print the message, the string as well as. Okay. Now you can see. So this is the way of printing these particular values. But right now I'm trying to converting only one object here. Observe carefully. So here we converted into the specific annotation, and it is printing the str value and the integer value whatever we are having here. Getting the point? So this instance of keyword, what exactly it is doing basically, because it is a super type here. Getting the point? So as this example we discuss here, if you try to define any annotation, by default it is trying to extending from this particular annotation. So this is we discussed in the yesterday session. Now whenever I'm trying to load this particular annotations, it is trying to return the annotations array. From the annotations array, we are trying to return the one by one. And it is a super type. But now what I'm doing here, this annotation to, if it is contained with this particular type here. So just I'm checking the type. Okay, this object is instance of this particular object here. If this particular object contains the information regarding this particular my annotation to my annotation, now convert it into the my annotation. So how I'm converting it? It is a type casting here. So this is we used in the previous example. For the primitive types, we define the type casting. But here, now what I'm doing is, I'm trying to define the object type here. My annotation is a object here. Getting the point? Now I'm trying to converting the object type finally. So this object we are going to have, and I'm trying to print this information. Getting the point? This is very important. If I want to check the specific object type here, if we want to check the specific object type, now what we are doing is, we are going to use the one keyword called instance of here. Okay, this is important here. Now finally we can comment out this, and you can check the one more condition. What is another condition we can check basically here? Instead of this particular my annotation, we can go for the what here, and you can convert it into what here. And for this particular what, we don't have this particular str. So what we are having basically my annotation to dot description. Okay, so this is the way we can check the specific object to type here. Now you can see it is printing the methods, what is the content is available for specific methods here. Getting the point? This is very important, we need to understand. So instead of checking the superclass type here, what we are doing is, we are trying to converting into the specific the annotation type, and finally we are calling the specific method whatever we are having here. Okay, but this is the information how we are achieving because of this particular instance of keyboard here. Now we can directly converting into the subclass type here. Okay, any questions regarding this particular what annotation? Basically, this is the annotation. What is doing it? It is trying to provide the information about the purpose of this particular method. What exactly the method will do, that I'm trying to providing with this particular description property here.
So using the get annotations method, you can have more than two annotations at once
Yes,
since it's an array. Okay.
yes, it is trying to return the annotation array.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a one more information we are having, something like if you see, like we have a one boolean property related methods also is available, something like we can provide is annotation present. So using this particular is annotation present, now what we can do, we'll try to identify, we can provide the name of the annotation is presented or not, we can check this. Getting the point? On top of the method, whatever the annotation we are having, we can provide the annotation parameter. Like for example, here I can provide my annotation dot class. Okay, and what happened this, basically it will try to return the boolean value. If this particular my annotation is available on top of this particular method, it will return true, otherwise it will return false here. So what is the best way of checking this? You can write the condition like this inside the if, and you can make this is the condition here. Getting the point? Now if this annotation is available, what I will do, up to this I'm going to check this particular section of code here. Okay, this is important here. So we can make the condition, if this annotation is not presented, this kind of code is not going to execute it here. Getting the point? So because this annotation is going to return Boolean value, either true or false it will return. So now see how this particular method is implemented internally. So here it is trying to return the Boolean value, and they are checking here annotation element dot super dot is annotation present. Now what you understand here, it is trying to call the super method. It is trying to call the super method, and we are passing whatever the annotation class. But if you see here, they are having the condition here. So this particular condition will check basically once we identify the generic concepts here. Because once we familiar with this, we'll move on to the generic concept here. But observe, as of now, just understand here, I'm passing annotation type here. I'm passing annotation type. They are calling the super class, and it will try to return the Boolean value. So if this particular Boolean will return true, the method is available on top of this particular method. Otherwise, it will return false. So whenever it is returning false, this condition will return false. So this particular code is not going to execute here. Okay. So this is also one way of making the condition here. Okay. Now what we need to understand here, so default values, how we can provide the default values. So if you see whatever the annotation we created so far, what annotation here, I'm not providing any default message here. Getting the point? We can provide the default message. Each and every custom annotation whatever we are creating it, we can come up with the default information, and if you are not overriding the default information, the default message will print. Otherwise the custom message whatever we are going to add, not only this particular string, anything, any parameter what you are trying to use. Okay, so now observe carefully. Here I'm going to write the message here. We have one keyword called default, and you can write whatever you want to write. So I'm not defining anything. Okay, so just I'm providing empty here. This is default information. Otherwise what you can write here, so just I'm trying to write testing here. Okay, so this is very important, we can understand. And now we'll go to this particular meta 2, and I will remove this. I will remove this. Now you can see I'm not getting any error. So carefully observe here, this annotation right now, it is not giving me any error, but whenever I'm trying to remove this, whenever I try to comment this, you'll get an error. So why we are getting an error here? Getting the point? So whenever I'm trying to comment out the default information, now I'm getting here. But whenever I'm trying to enable the default information, so this particular annotation, it is not giving me any error. If you're not providing the custom message, it will look up the default message. And if you're not providing the default information, so you need to add the custom message. Getting the point? If you're not adding it, it will give you the error, because inside this particular annotation we are having one property, something like a description we provided, and it will try to return this particular string related information. Getting the point? So this description you need to provide the information. Okay, so observe carefully in which scenario we can go for the default, and which scenario we need to specify the custom message. This is important here. If you are specifying this particular default here, if you are not overriding the message, what happens internally? The default message is going to load here. Okay, now if I'm going to run this particular example, the default message will print here. So now you can see in the console, it is trying to print the testing. Getting the point? So because here we did not provide the custom message. Now observe carefully. Now I am going to provide the custom message, something like a description, and here what I will do, the same whatever the information we added, like custom method properties. Okay, so this is the message I'm trying to add. Now this method is going to override with the default one. Now you can see custom method properties we are getting here. Getting the point? So you can observe carefully whenever we are trying to create any annotations here. So in which scenario we can go for this particular default, and which scenario so it's no need to provide the default information. That is very important here. Okay, but we have an option, we can provide the default values with the help of this particular keyword called default. Okay, so any questions regarding this particular defaults? Okay, so observe carefully. We have another important annotations here. We'll try to identify the predefined annotations what we have, and inside this particular predefined, one of the important annotation, basically that we'll call it as a marker annotation. So what exactly the marker annotation will do? Marker annotation basically it is a special kind of annotation, so that contains no members. Getting the point. So just we are going to define this particular annotation, and it is not defining any the properties inside this particular annotation. So those annotations we are going to call it as a marker annotation. And what is the purpose of this particular marker annotation will do? And basically it will try to mark an item. Basically the method on top of the method or on top of the class or wherever we are going to use, whether this particular item is executed or not, we are going to identify here, and whether this annotation is presented or not, how we are going to check here. So with help of this particular, the is annotation present here. Getting the point. So this is very important example we are discussing here, this particular the marker annotations here. So let's run this particular one more example to identify this particular marker annotations here. Let me write this particular marker annotation, how it is going to work. Here, so what is the annotation we can create? Something like my marker. So here also I'm going to create one more annotation, something like my marker. Okay, now you can provide anything. So I want to provide the type, and this is I want to field and a method. So just for understanding, I'm using these three locations. Now you can see. So this is the my marker annotation I'm providing, and the retention we already identified. Now you can see the target I'm trying to use type, field, and method. So this particular these three specific location this annotation is going to use, and here I'm not going to provide any information like this particular annotation does not contain any fields information. So then only we are going to call this particular annotation as a marker annotation. Okay, so what exactly this particular annotation is doing here? What exactly this particular annotation will do here? So as I explained here, so this particular, what we need to understand this, let me write this particular annotation here. Again, I'm going to use on top of this particular method. Okay, and here this annotation we are going to check this here. Okay, marker annotation, because marker annotation cannot have any properties here. This marker annotation cannot have any properties here. Basically it is a one of the special annotations here. Getting the point? It is the special type annotation. It is contains a no method, and basically it is we are trying to mark an item here. Whatever the item basically here our method information we are using. Wherever we are trying to use this particular annotation, now we are going to check whether this particular annotation, like whether this particular method is executed or not. Getting the point? So those information we are going to check with the help of this particular marker annotations here. Because if it is having properties, we are going to provide the information. But if I'm not having this particular property, what we can do? So just we are making as a no properties annotation, and just will identify whether this particular method is executed or not. How we are checking? By calling this particular is annotation is presented here. Getting the point? Is annotation is presented. With help of this, we are going to check the marker annotation, and if it is available, we'll try to return the same example, whatever we discussed in the previous example. Okay, the custom information we are getting, and right now this method is returning true. this particular, the line number 15, whatever the condition we are providing, so this particular condition will return true. Getting the point? So what is the purpose of this particular marker annotation will do? Basically, it is only the purpose is to make item. It's going to make the items as a marker. Mark is nothing but it's going to make so the property or the annotation, like the method, the field is executed or not, is going to identified by the marker annotations here. Okay. So any questions so regarding this particular marker annotations here? Okay. Now, yes, tell me.
I'm asking that if we want to check if the method is executed or not, so we need to use this is annotation present, and then we need to use by my marker dot the class. Am I
Yes.
right? Dot.
So basically, it is going to give the information like wherever we are trying to use this annotation, whether those properties are executed or not. So this information, if I want to provide, this is the way of making the condition here.
Okay, got it. So these both annotations are related with each other. Is annotation present?
Yeah, these two are the different, because here whatever the annotation we are providing, the specific annotation is available or not is going to check by this particular method. Here we are not checking the what annotation and my annotation here. So only we are checking here my marker.
Okay, sir, got it. Thanks.
Okay. So here basically the parameter is important. Whatever the annotation type we are going to provide, this particular parameter is going to check here. Okay. Now we'll understand what are all the predefined annotation we are having. The first one we'll see retention. Like retention we already discussed in the last example. Retention basically what we are having here. Let me close others. So you can see it is having one property, something like retention type. Okay, now we'll go to the documented. So this is the another one more information we need to understand. So observe carefully, documented annotation. So documented annotation is one of the marker annotation. Getting the point? It does not have any information here. But where we are going to use this particular documented annotation, whenever we are trying to make API related information. Basically, so if we observe like the Java library, it contains some documented information. Okay, and the same way, if you come up with the Spring related, Spring also it contains some documentation information. Same way, AWS related dependencies also it's contain documented. For those purpose, we are going to use this particular documented annotations here. Okay, just we are going to add this particular documented. Now we can understand here by seeing this particular annotation, this information is going to available inside the documentation here. Okay, so this is important. So this is the purpose of this particular documented, and internally it is a marker interface, but where we are using it on top of the annotation type. So this particular documented annotation, we are not going to use any class level, we are not going to use any method level, local variable or parameter or constructor. So wherever this annotation type we specify, annotation type basically this annotation, the documented annotation is going to use on top of the annotations only. Okay, on top of the annotations only we are going to use this particular documented annotation. So this is we understand what exactly the documented will do, and later what we need to understand here. So override we understand in the last example. Now we'll move on to the functional interfaces. We have one custom annotation is provided like in the 1.8 onwards. Functional interface. Okay, so this is we need to understand. Now observe carefully. Again, functional interface is also marker interface. but where we are using element type dot type. So type basically it is a class, interface, or any annotation type, or we can go for the enum. So these are all the four locations we are going to use this particular annotation called functional interfaces. If you want to know more information regarding this particular any annotation, you can read this information. So what is information it's provided here, you'll get understand very clearly the purpose of this particular annotation, what it will do here. Getting the point. So just I'm explaining. This is also one of the marker interface we are having it, and we'll see where this particular functional interface we are using. Okay, where this annotation we are going to use. I will try to provide the whenever we are trying to discuss about the collection related example. So there we are going to open multiple times this particular functional interface here. But here what we need to understand, functional interface is also one of the annotation, and it will try to use on top of the class interface or enum constraint, and we can go for this particular runtime, like it is available compile time as well as runtime, and this information is already documented. Now you can see since it is coming from the 1.8 onwards. So this method, like this annotation introduced from the 1.8 onwards here. Okay, so now you can see, so if you try to read this information, it will give you the much information what exactly this annotation will do here. Okay, so this is all about the custom annotation what we discussed so far here. And here I will try to move on to the one of the important concept to call input stream and output stream here. Okay, so what exactly this input stream and output stream is going to use, and if I want to use this particular input stream and output stream, so what exactly we need to follow the basic syntaxes here. So before going to discuss about the input stream and output stream, I want to provide the information regarding this println basically. First we'll see how this particular system.out.println is going to work right now. Okay, later we'll move on to the what are all the different streams we are having. Now observe carefully, I'm trying to open this particular out here. Now if you observe carefully, this is the print stream here. Okay, so what is the type we are having here? It is a type called print stream, and basically it is a out is a reference variable. Now you can see public static final. What is the behavior we are having for this particular out here, and we are having the behavior basically this we are going to access publicly, and this is we are going to access with the help of this particular name of the class name, and we are not going to modify the references information or to which class we are going to access here. Now you can see this out is available inside this particular system. Because of that only we are calling this variable directly without creating an object. Now it's clear. Now you can see system is a predefined class and out is a one reference variable. So using this reference variable, now what we are doing is we are trying to call the method called println. Getting the point. Now I will try to move on to this particular println here. So observe, now we come under this particular print stream class. Getting the point. Now what you understand here, the println method which is defined inside this particular print stream. So if I'm going to explain this particular print stream related information, how it is extending this. Okay, now observe carefully. Print stream is the one class we are having and is extending from the output stream. So output stream basically what it will do, it will try to print the information in a console or file or any wherever we want to print, like what is the output related information we are going to provide. So based on that it will try to print the output here. Getting the point. So we'll discuss about this particular file output stream and file input stream related example, but what we need to understand here, how this particular println is working first. Getting the point. How this particular println the method is working internally. Now if I'm going to open this, now you can see they are calling synchronized here. Getting the point. The synchronized keyword we already discussed here. Now you can see they are calling the print method and internally they are calling new line method. So why they are calling the new line method? Because as I explained earlier, println method every time it will try to print on the information next line here. Every time it will try to print the information on the new line here. But what about this particular print? It will try to print on the current line. So this example we already discussed multiple examples. Getting the point? So I don't want to provide one more time here. But observe carefully this particular print what exactly it is doing here. So internally they are calling the write method and they are trying to converting into the string, and inside this particular write here they are trying to write text out here. Okay, whenever you're trying to call this particular println or print method internally, what is doing is, so this is the method is going to call. So this is the method is going to call. Now if you observe carefully, they are printing the message on our console with the help of this particular code. With the help of this particular code. Okay, so here they are writing the text output stream, like later they are calling the write method, and whatever the message we are providing, so this is the message it's going to write. Getting the point? This message is going to write inside this particular text out here. The text out is contains the console related information here. Okay, so same way we'll try to identify the file related information. Now what you understand here, so system is a one predefined class. Okay, system is a one predefined class and out is a one reference variable. Getting the point? This is important. It is not a the normal variable like how we define the print ABC. So this is the object type variable. So what is the type of object is holding a print string, and using this particular print string we are calling the println method, or we can go for the print method. So print will return the information on the current line. Println it is trying to print on the next line. Why it is calling the next line? Because internally, so we identify the println method. Println method explicitly it is calling the new line here. Explicitly it is calling the new line. Getting the point? This is important here. Whenever we are calling this print method is going to call here. So the print cannot call any new line information. Only the println information is going to call new line. Now if you see this, so again, so they are calling on the new line information. But earlier text out dot write method we are going to call. So whatever the message we are having to write on the console. So right now what we are doing is we are calling the new line method. The new line basically it will jump onto the next line here. Okay, so this is we need to understand here. And here whenever we are trying to write the information, so we may get this particular interrupted exception. Okay, what we need to understand here, whenever we are getting this particular exception, we are going to interrupt the one of the current thread here. So you can see current thread dot interrupt method we are calling it. So we are trying to disturbing the current thread here. Okay, so this is very information we are trying to discuss, something like the println method, how it is working internally. Okay, any questions so regarding this particular system dot out dot println and print? So both method we discuss here. Okay. So if not, so tomorrow the output stream and input stream related example we are discussing. So once we completed this particular example, we are going to discuss another important concept called generic concepts here. So the generic is also one of the important concept we are discussing. So once we completed this particular generic concepts here, now what we will do, we'll move on to the collection related information. So we'll after this particular generic, we'll discuss about the lambda related functionality. And once we are completed the lambda related functionality, we'll move on to the string related basic example. And later we'll move on to the collection. Collection is the last topic in our core Java. Okay. So most probably we are having the four important concepts here. So we'll try to discuss one by one in the daily, like day-to-day sessions here. Okay. So we'll continue tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.